Ja, hallo und herzlich willkommen bei Viel zu nett, diesmal von draußen an einem wunderschönen See. Ich habe jetzt heute und gestern stundenlang das Video bearbeitet vom letzten Gerichtstag und spiele das Abschlussresümee von Camille Vasquez und Ben Chu ein. Das sind die Anwälte von Johnny Depp. Ich halte das jetzt relativ kurz und hoffe, dass es euch gefällt und sage schon mal Tschüss von hier aus. Alles Gute von Viel zu nett und bis bald. Tschüss.
On May 27th, 2016, Ms. Heard walked into a courthouse in Los Angeles, California to get a no-notice ex-parte restraining order against Mr. Depp, and in doing so, ruined his life by falsely telling the world that she was a survivor of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp. Today, on May 27th, 2022, exactly 6 years later, we ask you to give Mr. Depp his life back by telling the world that Mr. Depp is not the abuser Ms. Heard said he is, and hold Ms. Heard accountable for her lies. But what was happening behind closed doors was quite different from what Ms. Heard presented to the world. The exact opposite, in fact. There is an abuser in this courtroom, but it is not Mr. Depp. And there is a victim of domestic abuse in this courtroom, but it is not Ms. Heard. The evidence presented at this trial has shown that Ms. Heard is in fact the abuser, and Mr. Depp the abused. That she is a deeply troubled person, violently afraid of abandonment, desperate for attention and approval. And in her relationship with Mr. Depp, she was violent, she was abusive, and she was cruel. You heard from Dr. Shannon Curry, who explained that Ms. Heard suffers from borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. These are disorders that are characterized by anger, sometimes uncontrollable and explosive anger, and a powerful, sometimes desperate need for attention, acceptance, and approval. Fear of abandonment is the deepest fear. A person with these disorders will suffer from dramatically fluctuating moods and can sometimes be violent and aggressive. They can also be charming and likable, but they can be incredibly manipulative and wild. An emotional roller coaster with wild swings, from idolizing their partner to devaluing him. That Ms. Heard's deepest fear is one of abandonment, being left by Mr. Depp. Mr. Depp's greatest crime in her mind, the fault she confronts him with time and time again, is that he splits. He leaves the fight, especially when Ms. Heard gets physical, and she couldn't stand it when he did. You heard from Ms. Heard yourselves in audio recordings how upsetting it was to her when Mr. Depp would split. You saw the barrage of text messages she would send when he would leave, calling him a monster for doing so. You heard from witnesses like Travis McGivern, Tara Roberts, and Debbie Lloyd that Ms. Heard would claw at Mr. Depp, block the elevator, throw a punch when Mr. Depp tried to separate himself from the fight. And you heard from Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's couple therapist, Dr. Anderson, that Ms. Heard reported that when Mr. Depp would leave to de-escalate a fight, she would strike him to keep him there because she would rather be in a fight than have him leave. You heard from Mr. Depp about how often Ms. Heard would berate him, insult him, and physically attack him, including one of the most serious occasions when Ms. Heard threw a vodka bottle at Mr. Depp, severely injuring his finger, and then put a cigarette out on his face. You heard from Mr. Depp that this whole incident in Australia started because Ms. Heard was enraged that Mr. Depp wanted a post-nuptial agreement, and she wasn't in his will, just a month after getting married. When her husband was seriously injured and bleeding from a partially amputated finger, what did Ms. Heard do? She pursued him. She kept coming after him, because that's what she does. She wouldn't stop.
It's not to get you mad. It's just to get out of a bad situation that's happening before it gets worse. In Australia, when we had the big fight where I lost the tip of my finger, at least 5 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms I went to
to avoid talking to me, to
To
avoid
escape
working it out. That's
to
the
escape
problem.
the fight.
You don't escape the fight. You escape the solution.
No.
You escape the solution.
No.
You escape figuring it out. We cannot work it out if you run away to the bathroom every time.
Most importantly, you heard from Ms. Heard yourselves on multiple audio recordings admitting to being physically violent with Mr. Depp. You heard Ms. Heard admit to hitting Mr. Depp. Unlike Mr. Depp, who you heard admit to and own up to his past mistakes and his struggles, particularly with drugs and alcohol, Ms. Heard will not admit that she has ever done anything wrong. In the end, she walked away with $7 million without any tax liabilities, which she said she was donating to 2 charities. They got less than $1 million from her. And the Children's Hospital, they got $250,000. But that didn't stop Ms. Heard from telling the world that she donated everything, because remember, she wanted nothing. And she had donated everything. The word donated. Ms. Heard tried to tell you that pledge and donate mean the same thing. She claims she hasn't given the money because she was sued. But you've heard uncontested evidence that she had the money for 13 months prior to this lawsuit being commenced by Mr. Depp. She had all the money and had month after month after month to fulfill her pledge and actually donate the money. But she didn't. Lies. That is Ms. Heard's narrative. Lies upon lies.
And then there was a divorce settlement. You got $7 million. People were saying this is all about the money. But then you did something that twisted that whole argument. What did you do with that money?
$7 million in total was donated to, I split it between the ACLU and Children's Hospital of Los Angeles.
ACLU is a human rights organization.
Sorry, ACLU is a prominent organization, nonprofit.
So let's talk about the giant lie at the heart of this case. Ms. Heard's claim that Mr. Depp is an abusive monster and that she is a public figure representing domestic abuse. At the start of this case, Mr. Chu and I told you that you were going to hear some disturbing and graphic tales of abuse from Ms. Heard, and they were designed to shock you and overwhelm you, which you have. We told you that this would be a performance, the role of her lifetime. She wants you to believe that she was abused countless times. Countless times. Over the entire course of their relationship. But as Mr. Chu and I promised you, the evidence just does not bear that out. Ms. Heard has told you that she has mountains of evidence of abuse. But there are no medical records reflecting she sustained any injuries from the abuse she claims. Unlike Ms. Heard, who you heard apologizing for physical violence in multiple audio recordings, you have never heard that from Mr. Depp, because he never used physical violence against Ms. Heard. Ms. Heard wants you to believe that she gave Mr. Depp a big knife that said, hasta la muerte, until death, to the man who supposedly would get drunk and high and beat her. Other than Ms. Heard's testimony, all the evidence you've seen in this trial shows that it was Ms. Heard who attacked and grievously wounded Mr. Depp when she threw a vodka bottle at him, severing his finger. The mountain of evidence that Mr. Depp abused Ms. Heard is simply not there. What Ms. Heard testified to in this courtroom is the story of far too many women. But the overwhelming evidence and weight of that evidence shows that it is not her story. It's not Ms. Heard's story. It was an act of profound cruelty, not just to Mr. Depp, but to true survivors of domestic abuse. For Ms. Heard to hold herself out as a public figure representing domestic abuse. It was false, it was defamatory, and it caused irreparable harm. And to talk more about that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and my friend, Mr. Chu.
You've met the real Johnny Depp. You have heard that Mr. Depp came from humble, very difficult beginnings. His mother used to hit his father and the kids, including young Mr. Depp. And when his mother got violent, Mr. Depp would retreat and find a place to hide. Sometimes he and his sister Christy would find a place to hide together. Mr. Depp never hit back. And like his father, he either stood up and took the violence or he retreated from it. Those are habits he returned to later when he found himself in a relationship with another person who returned his love with abuse, with physical abuse. And despite this long, unhappy history with his mother, Johnny never turned his back on her. And from those humble and difficult beginnings, Mr. Depp grew into one of the greatest actors and movie stars of his generation. Fame came with challenges to Mr. Depp and his family, but he did his best to live a private, quiet life, and despite it all, and over the years built a reputation as a respected artist and as a decent, very well-liked man, which you've heard from many people. Mr. Depp dated major figures like Winona Ryder, Kate Moss, and Vanessa Paradis, with whom he spent 14 years together and with whom they had their children. Before Amber Heard, ladies and gentlemen, no woman ever before Amber Heard ever claimed that Mr. Depp raised a hand to her in his 58 years. This is Me Too without any Me Too. Ms. Heard and her lawyers have spent much of this trial talking about drugs and alcohol. Mr. Depp is no saint, and he has never claimed to be one. He has made mistakes in his life, as we all have. Yes, he has struggled with drugs and alcohol, but you never heard him deny that. We told you that in the opening statement. He owns his flaws. He admits to them. He told you all about them. But he is not a violent abuser. He's not an abuser, as Ms. Heard claims. And he did not and does not deserve to have his life, his legacy, destroyed by a vicious lie. And there is a world of difference between having substance abuse problems and being a physical abuser. The lies have grown and metastasized over time, and they need to be stopped. And those false accusations have caused more harm to Mr. Depp than her fists ever did. You heard Mr. Depp testify that he has lost nothing less than everything because of Ms. Heard's lies. Nothing less than everything. And to tarnish him as an abuser is to destroy him in the eyes of many of these people who will never look at him the same way again. There's an old saying that a good reputation takes a lifetime to build, but only a second to destroy. Amber Heard is not a true victim, and Mr. Depp certainly is not an abuser. In fact, what you have seen time and time again through the course of this trial is that Ms. Heard lies. She lies all the time about things that are important and the things that aren't important. She just can't seem to stop. And as Ms. Vasquez said, what she routinely does is she doesn't take ownership or responsibility for anything, and she has an excuse for everything. But in this courtroom, confronted with the evidence, she can't run away from her own words. This case for Mr. Depp has never been about money, nor is it about punishing Ms. Heard. It is about Mr. Depp's reputation and freeing him from the prison in which he has lived for the last 6 years, and it's 6 years to the day. It's about showing Mr. Depp's children, Lily Rose and Jack, that the truth is worth fighting for. It is. And you can do something. And only you, ladies and gentlemen, can do that for him. You've seen the evidence in this case over 6 long weeks, which we again thank you for. That evidence shows overwhelmingly that Ms. Heard's attempt to paint herself as a heroic survivor, an innocent survivor, and Mr. Depp as a terrifying abuser are utterly false. We ask you to please return your verdict for Mr. Depp. We ask you, we implore you to give him his name, his reputation, and his career back. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take